Hey guys, it's John P. In this video, we need to address a topic that few collectors like to talk or think about, and this is, simply put, Rolex watches do not make good investments. Now, this is not only just true for Rolex watches, but watches in general. I'm going to be sharing with you in this video 5 reasons to not only remind you of this, because I'm hoping that you've liked and subscribed, so make sure to hit that bell button below so you see the notifications when I make new posts, but I'm hoping that for those of you that are new to watch collecting, maybe this helps you in your journey, or maybe if you've been around for a while and you do follow this channel, that this will be a bit of a refresher to buy the watches that you're going to wear and enjoy, because nothing is guaranteed tomorrow, especially in watches. And I'm going to share with you the 5 reasons why watches are really just not to be considered investments. This episode is brought to you by chronograbs.com, my marketplace for watch dealers to buy, sell, and trade wholesale. Apply for the early access beta at chronograbs.com. Now, there are scenarios where people realize gains in watches, including Rolex watches, especially if they bought them at the bottom, they timed the market, right? And then they sold them at the peak, maybe 2.5 years ago. Yeah, sure, you realized a gain. Or maybe you're the one person that received the phone call for the Daytona, you bought it at retail, $14,500 for the stainless one, somewhere in that ballpark, and then you sold it for more than double. Sure, you realized a gain, but the reality is, if you did get the call for the Daytona, it's very likely that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars with the boutique or with the authorized dealer that gave you that call, and in which case do you care? Sure, the percentage of your gain there that you realized, nice percentage, but you can't do that at scale, right? So sure, you made a few, some free 15, maybe upwards of $20,000, which is great, but you spent that much with the boutique or the authorized dealer, so it doesn't really sound like that person is allergic to money. And something also to keep in mind is that there have always been fluctuations in the prices and the market prices of luxury goods. You can see it in the auto industry right now. Used cars and used luxury cars, major pullback. So these things are all interconnected, different economic factors, right? Interest rates on things, how much money is in circulation, endless amounts of things affect luxury goods prices, including watches. I'm going to share with you the 5 reasons now in just 1 second about why I don't think you should be looking at watches as investments. And also something to keep in mind, I like Rolex watches. Many of the models I really love. I have some for sale. When I was one of the owners of Del Rey Watch, I've now since sold my stake in the company, but when I was one of the owners of Del Rey Watch, we also carried and stocked Rolex watches along with the other brands, because I'm not against them. People aren't against them, but I think it's fair to be honest and transparent about viewing these things for what they are, with any kind of that extra marketing spin, or hey, you could convert this to cash anywhere in the world kind of a thing. People used to say that in jewelry stores, and I just don't view it that way. Even being in the industry for such a long time, and now back to being a collector and still in the industry, this is how I view watches as well. I'll invest in watch companies, I'll build watch companies, but I'm not going to invest in watches because I see behind the curtains. I'm going to share with you about it here right now. So the first reason that watches, including Rolex, just don't make good investments is the types of fees you have to pay when either acquiring or selling, disposing of them. Let me explain. When we're talking about buying maybe stocks or something out there, and by the way, this is not investment advice, so none of you take that as such. When you're buying stocks and other types of assets, right, you have these fees that are associated with that trade for the broker to handle it on your behalf, right? Simplest terms here, but you get the idea. When you're buying and selling watches, that's not the case. You can always go private party, but you're not going to get market price. If you're not a dealer, you're not going to get dealer price for when you sell the watch out there, which means you need to sell the watch using a dealer, using a marketplace. Marketplaces take minimum 10%, sometimes more, 15%, right off the top. So any kind of short-term gain there is more than offset by the fees. In addition, a dealer is going to need to take more than that, depending on the watch and how quickly they can sell it. But the dealer also has staff, overhead, you name it. So they have to bake that in there, and they also have to bake in some of the fees for the credit card processing or the wire fees and all of that. So when you look at the fees, it really starts adding up. So even if you said, sure, I can buy this watch and sell it for a 15% gain, well, the reality is you're going to have to pay a percentage of that out, and is it really worth the time spent buying and sell the watch and the opportunity cost. So that's something to consider when you're looking at watches is what are you actually going to get net out of the sale? And is it worth your time at all to consider that watch to be an investment, especially if the watch is not of incredibly significant price value? Now, next, the watch industry really does not have regulations. Now, they have different KYC laws around the world, and they have different, anti-money laundering laws around the world. But the reality is, the watch industry is not regulated. There's not a board that exists somewhere that comes up with laws and regulations and how deals have to be made and the types of market dynamics need to be controlled for, some attempted fairness. None of that exists. It's truly the Wild West. There are people out there, private people, sellers, collectors, minds of the such, dealers that do collaborate, if you will, out there, and especially when you get into vintage. I'm not going to get too much into it here, but you get the idea. People really do make certain moves, whether it's in coordination with magazines, zines, journals, blogs, to make moves and plays and pushes on certain watches and categories. And it just so happens to be that a lot of these connected people own a lot of these inventory pieces. So that's just one example. But because there's no regulations, it's also incredibly open to fraud. I mean, I'm not going to, rehash or, beat on a dead horse here, as they say. But if you watch content online, you know that there are some individuals out there that have at least been accused or allegedly been part of some really negative scenarios when it comes to watch dealing. And that's not new. Dealing of anything, you hear this kind of a thing. But because there are no regulations, it's incredibly open for these types of unscrupulous individuals, which comes at an increased risk to you, the collector, if considering these things to be investments. Now, next, watches are international, and with the international component comes a lot of different factors when determining potential price, but also the sale price or the purchase price as well. What other thing, the exact thing, can you buy for entirely different prices in different countries? Major swings in value. Now, sure, there's different things like commodities and precious metals and all that, but there are markets for this that determine the price. But when you get into the watch industry and the international components, there are a lot of pieces of the watch industry that you don't see online. There are a lot of countries that have watches that, for example, cannot sell on Chrono 24. For example, cannot sell on the internet. It's a whole different part of the world, right? Russia is a huge market, but they're pretty much cut off from the world when it comes to the watch industry right now. China as well. And this goes on for so many other countries, including a large portion of Africa, including Central Africa. So there's a whole part of the watch industry that you really don't see out there in this international component, and these things can change at any time. So when you factor that in, it increases the risk when you're looking at these things from that kind of standpoint. Now, next, watches they're susceptible to theft and crime. These things are not protected. There's no type of, federally insured insurance, for example, right? It's not like a deposit in a bank or any kind of financial institution or a real estate for that matter. There's really nothing to protect that asset. I mean, of course, there's the law and ownership. That's something, right? But you have to do something about it. Your watch is stolen or taken from you, or it goes missing. You have to file a police report. You have to call your insurance company. You may have to fight the insurance company. In recent times, I've heard of some collectors that have had their watch go missing or is stolen, and they couldn't prove that someone stole it, but the insurance company came back and said, hey, you can't really prove it was stolen. You have a police report, and they make you fight for it, and then they make you settle. That's something that seems to be going on a whole lot right now. I can't tell you exactly why, because only the insurance companies really know what they're trying to do at the end of the day. But that's something that I've heard increasingly, and that increases the risk profile because these items are targets. Now, I'm not saying that you should stop wearing them and enjoying them and loving them because, hey, I haven't either. Watches is a really big hobby and passion of mine. But when I look at my investments, I want to limit the downside risk on things if I can, and the upside potential certainly does not outweigh any other less risky upside potential opportunities that exist out there for investments. So for me, it just doesn't make sense when you consider this additional point of risk. And last, why I don't think that watches, including Rolex, make great investments and are really not to be invested in at the end of the day, is that you are completely beholden to the brand. Let me explain. I'm not going to mention the brand, but for those of you that are kind of following the watch community online, there's a particular brand, and a public figurehead of this brand has at least allegedly done some things that the collectors in their group really didn't like. It rubbed them the wrong way, and allegedly a lot of these collectors dumped their watches on the market in response, very expensive watches. And so because of that, the watches, their price in the market have gone down considerably, and this was all because a potential possible gaffe or goof by the person that was connected or was the brand. And so when you see that, I think that's a prime example of the value of the watches is entirely determined by the brand. They can make more of them tomorrow and they don't have to stop. There's no limits. Back to the regulation part. The brand can just decide to dump out an unlimited amount of Rolex Submariners should they choose. The brand could decide to cut the retail price if the market gets a little tough, but maybe you paid double that price last year thinking that you would double your money. You get it? The brand could do anything with not only the brand value in perception, which is going to affect the market price and market value of the watch. They could just keep making more of them for a cash grab. They could do anything. So the thing is, when you look at watches as an investment, especially modern watches, which are still being produced today in factories, you have to consider and you really have to trust that the brand has your best interest in mind, and it doesn't make sense for them to have your best interest in mind just from a business standpoint. Unfortunately, because there's people in there that have to make careers, that have their jobs, and their jobs are keeping their jobs are entirely predicated on them pumping out and selling more watches. I don't know of an accurate metric out there that measures what do collectors really think about Rolex, because it doesn't matter because they keep selling them off the shelf. So sure, the collectors online are rubbed the wrong way. Do they really care? I don't know, but that's all reflected in the market price. So something to consider for why watches are not good investments, including Rolex watches. So guys, what do you think here? I know I've been a little bit critical, but I do receive questions or comments about this all of the time. People ask me for best investment watches. I go on my Instagram, The Real John P, and I have people every week asking me, should I invest in this? Is this a good investment? Is this a good investment? Even people that I'm friends with for years now that say, hey, I just got the call for this watch. Is it a good investment? And I always say, it depends. Are you investing in your happiness? There's no way to know where the market's going to go, where the model's going to go. I can tell you if people like it, but that's not the only factor. That's only the tiniest part of it. There's endless amounts of things. It's all baked in. And for these reasons, myself included, not only as a collector, but also being in on the industry, and some of these don't even apply to me, I still don't invest in watches in that way for these reasons. But I want to hear, what do you have to say about this? I'd love to see it and hear it in the comments below. Please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I appreciate it. I would welcome any kind of feedback on chronograbs.com, my new dealer B2B platform for the exchange of inventory. And as well, you can find me on Instagram, The Real John P. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.